Well, hello class. This time we're doing absolute value equations, and I've got a bunch of questions for you to practice. So, if you would, you could write these down, give them a shot, or just give them a shot before I go over each one. Pause whenever you like. Just try them, please, before I start covering them. The one thing to remember about absolute value is you want to try to isolate the absolute value on that side of the equation. So this absolute value is all by itself on this side, the left side of this equation, this equal sign. This one is all by itself. This absolute value stuff is all by itself on the left side of the equal sign. This one is not all by itself. If you notice, it's got a 3 in front of this absolute value. So we're going to find a way to get rid of 3. Same thing here. This is not all by itself. This absolute value stuff is not by itself. We need to get rid of the positive 4 and the 5 right here. And this one is very similar to number 4. Okay. These two questions tend to be the hardest, but if you imagine this idea where this is just like a variable, for example, we had 5y plus 4 equals 29. You do the same type of idea first that you're going to do here. You're going to subtract 4 to solve this equation. It's just a two-step equation, 5y equals 25. And then we're going to divide by 5. And you'll tell me what y would equal 5. Okay, now this y in my example I just made up is the same idea as absolute value. So eventually when we get this question, you'll see it's the absolute value of 4x minus 2 is the same thing as this y right here equals 5. Okay, I'll discuss this again as we get closer to this question. So let's move on to the first one. Absolute values are all by themselves. Once the absolute value is all by itself on that side of the equal sign, then you would set two separate equations. One where you get that stuff inside the absolute value to equal the positive version of this number, and one where you get it to equal the negative version. Okay, you solve each one. Just divide by 4 in this case, and you get 3. Divide by 4, and you get negative 3. So these are your two possible solutions for this particular equation. I'm going to move on to the second question. Pause it if you like, and then try it, please. Okay, once again, the absolute value is already isolated. Once it's isolated, you can write two separate equations. It must be isolated first. Then you write your two separate equations, one with the positive, one with the negative equation there. Do some math to solve it. Add 5. 2x will equal 24. Then you can divide by 2. This one right here, you're going to do the same idea. Add 5, and you'll get 2x is equal to a negative 19 plus 5 is negative 14. Then divide by 2, just like we did on the other one, and x will equal negative 7. There's your two solutions. If you want to check to make sure, plug them back in here. So say, for example, we check this one. 2 times negative 7 makes negative 14. Negative 14 minus 9 makes negative 19. The absolute value of negative 19 is going to be positive 19. Moving on to the third question. Once again, you want to isolate the absolute value stuff. So this stuff right within here, these bars right here, we want to get by itself. It's not by itself. It has a 3 on that side. So first thing we need to do is get rid of this 3. This is 3 times when it's right next to it. So we're going to undo times with division. That cancels that out. That leaves the absolute value of 2x plus 4 equaling to 10. Now the absolute value has been isolated. It's all by itself. And like we did on the other questions, once it's isolated, like this one was, we write two separate equations. This is isolated now, right here. So we can write two separate equations. 2x plus 4 equals 10, and 2x plus 4 equals negative 10. Solve each one of those. Subtract 4, that cancels this stuff out. 6, x will equal 3. You should be able to do this one as well. Do it on your own. Don't just copy me, you learn by doing. 2x equals negative 14, which means x is going to be negative 7. You can plug your answers back into here and check and see if it works. So if you tried 3, 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 4 is 10. The absolute value of 10 is 10, and 10 times 3 is 30. Do the same thing here. Plug in 7, negative 7. 2 times negative 7 is negative 14. You had negative 14 plus 4. You'd have a negative 10. The absolute value of negative 10 is a positive 10. and you get 3 on the outside, so 3 times 10 makes 30. It works. Here we go, 5th question. I already gave you a head start trying to tell you how you should work this one out. If you want to, go ahead and pause it. So we want to try to get this stuff isolated. It's just like I was saying before, we're going to try and treat it as if it was like 5y, all this is y, plus 4 equals 29. Okay? But I'm going to go ahead and insert this the way it should be. 4x minus 2, like that. I'm going to get that stuff in red all by itself. So I'm going to subtract 4, and that will cancel out this. 25. 5 times the absolute value of 4x minus 2 equals that. It is still not isolated. I need to get rid of the 5. So I'm going to divide this left side by 5 and the right side by 5. Dividing by left side by 5 cancels out multiplying by 5, leaving you with 4x minus 2 in the absolute value equals 5. Now it is isolated. And since it's isolated, you can write 2 separate equations. The first one would involve the stuff that's within the absolute value to equal 5, and the stuff that's within the absolute value to equal negative 5. You only write the positive and negative here, positive 5, negative 5, once this has been isolated. Nothing else is on the left side of the equation, except for the stuff in the absolute value. So we're going to do some math and solve this. Add 2, you should get 4x equals 7. Divide by 4 and you get 7/4, whatever decimal that is if you want to. Same thing here, add 2, you'll get 4x equals negative 5 plus 2 is negative 3, so x is going to be a negative 3/4. Okay, there you go. Last one, very similar to the previous one. Give it your best shot. Pause. Please try it on your own. See if you can do it. Alright, so very similar to the previous one. I forgot to mention last time, you do not distribute in absolute values. Do not distribute absolute values. Do not distribute in absolute values. You can only do that with parentheses. So, we're going to try and get this absolute value by itself. This will cancel out. You get 80. 8 times the absolute value of 3x plus 4 will equal 80. Once again, this is not isolated yet. So we're going to have to divide the left side by 8, divide the right side by 8. That cancels out the multiplication of 8. You're left with the absolute value of 3x plus 4 equals 10. Is this isolated on the left side? Hopefully you're thinking, yes it is. And so now you can write your 2 separate equations and solve. Skip ahead a little bit, and that is your answer for one of them. Let's do the other one. And I skipped ahead a little bit, and there's the answer for when you have negative 10. Remember, negative 10 and minus 4 makes negative 14. This doesn't divide evenly, so you can leave it a fraction, or you can change it to decimal if you want. So there's your 2 answers. I hope this video helped you a little bit. Please ask me questions if you have them. I'll be happy to help you.